Well, today's show is all about fun ways to incorporate cottage cheese into our recipes because cottage cheese has become the new hot ingredient. So we're going to show you some ways that you can add cottage cheese. You will not know that it's in any of these recipes. I promise you that. So if you're already squirming at the thought of cottage cheese, because I know a lot of people don't like it.
I don't care for it by itself.
Yes. Then just rest assured you will not know it's in here.
Yeah.
My favorite sous chef is with me today in the kitchen, my sister Emily. And Em and I both have been using cottage cheese for like 20 years.
I feel like you've invented cottage cheese. Maybe you didn't invent it, but you made it cool before it was cool.
I have been using it for a long time in recipes. And the first place that I really think that we discovered it was in shakes. So in protein shakes and smoothies. If you put cottage cheese in there,
game changer.
It really is. It's so good. It's smooth, and what I like about it is it adds like a consistency so that it's like thicker, almost like a milkshake. So, and it adds protein. Our cottage cheese inspired menu includes protein packed chicken broccoli bake, cottage cheese blueberry muffins, cottage cheese blender pancakes, and easy protein bagels. So today we're making a protein-packed chicken, broccoli, and rice bake. So this is like your mom's casserole or your grandma's casserole that you ate growing up with the crackers crushed on top, and it just feels like it's home.
This reminds me so much of Mom.
Yes. For this recipe, you'll need 2 cups of Greek yogurt, 1 cup of cottage cheese, 1 cup of shredded cheese, 1 cup of chicken broth, 4 cups of cooked chicken, 2 cups of cooked rice, 12 ounces of broccoli, and 1 cup of shredded cheese for the topping. And it's really, really simple in the fact that you don't have to make a cream of chicken sauce. You don't have to use one of those canned cream of chicken. Who even knows what's in that? You make your own sauce. So you just add some cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, chicken broth, and some cheese.
Sounds good.
To a blender.
Okay, that sounds super healthy.
And then to the baking dish, I'm gonna add some cooked rice. So I just did the ready rice, like the 1-minute ready rice from the packages. And then some cooked broccoli. This is frozen broccoli, so very simple. Literally took some frozen broccoli florets, steamed them in the microwave, put them in the pan with the 1-minute rice. Now, the 1-minute rice, you don't have to cook ahead of time. Everything's gonna cook right in this casserole dish. And then some cooked chicken. So if you have leftover chicken from the night before with your dinner, or you have some shredded chicken from a crock pot, I make that often just in big batches. You can take out a few cups and add it to this baking dish. So you can see it's already so easy. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of just give this a quick stir while you blend up the ingredients for the cheese sauce. Okay, and then you just blend that cheese sauce just until it's pretty much smooth. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you can pour it right over the chicken dish. And what are some things that you remember from our childhood?
Well, this.
Like food-wise.
This.
Yes.
For sure.
We had this. And then we also had some kind of broccoli cheese thing that crescent rolls.
Oh yes, with crescent rolls.
Like wrapped in crescent rolls.
It was on a Pampered Chef stone, and it was shaped like a wreath.
Yeah.
Shout out in the comments if you've had that same thing. It was in the 1990s. I think everybody had it because the Pampered Chef parties were all the rage.
That's so true. Yes. Everyone had a Pampered Chef stone.
Yes. Stouffer's Pizza?
Yes.
We always had the Schwan truck come.
Yes.
Do you remember they would deliver food? Boston Market, my mom's favorite luxury take-home dinner.
Yes. Which... Who even knows what was in that? And then also
French bread pizza.
French bread pizza. Yes.
Those were like our go-tos.
Yes.
Oh, and fried spaghetti.
Yes. My mom took spaghetti, she cooked the noodles, and she fried them.
In butter.
Yes. In butter. And
they were really good though.
Yeah,
they were crispy.
And she put Parmesan cheese. No wonder we love Parmesan cheese.
Yeah, but now we make it with the same thing with spaghetti squash. So technically, we're carrying on the tradition, making it a little healthier. You know, the funny thing is when I talk to my husband and I talk about my mom making all these meals, he had the identical foods.
I know.
I think it was like the moms of the 90s.
Yes.
It's like what they did to survive. Yes. And they didn't know better and they needed quick meals. So it was funny that we had almost identical.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. Boston Market sounds enticing. You know,
That's
you just
it?
pick something, just in the sense that
The idea.
you pick up something from the store and bring it home, and it's like
a home
500 days
meal.
of leftovers.
Yes, it's like Thanksgiving meal in a blink of an eye.
It's true. All right, we're going to bake this 425 degrees for about 45 minutes. You want to cover it with foil, and then just in the last few minutes, uncover it and let the cheese get nice and bubbly on top. So for these blueberry muffins, I added cottage cheese, which not only adds protein, but it also adds more of a richness to the muffins. So these blueberry muffins are so good. They really do remind me of something that my mom used to make when she would make muffins. So they're pretty much a classic version of blueberry muffins, just healthier ingredients. For this recipe, you'll need 1/4 cup of applesauce, 1/2 cup of sweetener, 1 cup of cottage cheese, 1/4 cup of almond milk, 2 eggs, 1½ cup of oat flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1 cup of blueberries. So of course, oat flour is also a great way to add not only a little bit of protein, because oats do have some protein, but also fiber. And I'm always looking for ways to add protein and fiber, especially to my baked goods. I think a lot of times when people go into a coffee shop, they assume that they're getting a nice, healthy blueberry muffin for breakfast. In fact, I was just at the airport the other day and I was watching one person after another right in front of me ordering muffins. And sure, they did look delicious, but I was thinking to myself, they probably have no idea that they're basically eating the same amount of calories and sugar and carbs as really a donut. So if you like donuts, you might as well go with the donut instead of the muffin. And I will admit that sometimes muffins are just as delicious from a bake shop, but they're typically loaded with tons of sugar and white flour and white sugar, which honestly, when it really all starts to digest, does digest pretty much the same as not only a donut, but basically a dessert or a candy bar. So it's good to make baked goods at home when you can decide what goes into them. And that's why I love making muffins and cakes and bars, any kind of dessert all at home, because really you can make them just as delicious, but just with much more nutritious ingredients. So the cottage cheese adds a good amount of protein, the oats add fiber and protein, and then we have the blueberries, which are wonderful in antioxidants and all of the wonderful vitamins and nutrition. And just recently, I started to get much more into not just protein and fiber and all of that, but the micronutrients of food. So what type of antioxidants and vitamins and minerals are into things. So I've been purposely trying to think about, you know, how can I add some more vitamin C or vitamin B or antioxidants into our foods? And these are all just foods really that God created us to eat, so you don't have to think too hard. If you look at, you know, how can I get some more vitamin C? It's pretty much in any type of fruit and veggie. So as long as you have some fruits and some veggies each day, you're pretty much going to be getting everything that your body needs, as long as you're purposeful about it and just choosing the foods that God already created. God made it very simple for us. So I'm just gonna scoop this mixture into the muffin tin, and you will see that I do have these lined. I have parchment paper, and it does help them to release a little bit easier because it's a non-stick liner. These muffins in particular can stick quite a bit, so if you wanna spray the liner or the muffin tin, definitely do that with cooking spray ahead of time, just so that they don't stick as much. And then whenever I'm making muffins of any kind, I like to top it with whatever it is that's inside the muffin. So for these in particular, I'm gonna take some extra blueberries and I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle a few on top just so that you can tell what's inside of them. And it also makes them that much more fun to eat. Then we're gonna just top it just with a few blueberries so they look really pretty. And these are perfect for on the go for breakfast or as a snack. You can even warm them up and it almost tastes like a blueberry cake or streusel because of the cinnamon in there. They're so, so good. I'm gonna bake these 375 degrees for 25 minutes or until a toothpick or a knife comes out clean. Coming up next, looking for the perfect pancake recipe? Look no further. These blender pancakes are made with just a few simple real food ingredients and a great way to start your day. So when it comes to cottage cheese, not all cottage cheese, just like everything else, is created equal. I like to look at the ingredients in the cottage cheese. I know it sounds crazy because you would think it's just basically milk in there, but to my surprise, when I started looking at ingredients more closely, I was shocked to see all of the additives and the things that I couldn't even pronounce in just cottage cheese. So you might be thinking, oh, I'm adding a lot of protein, and that's true, but you might be adding a lot of other stuff as well. So I like to get a brand that has just simply milk, cream, and salt. That's all that is in a good can or canister of cottage cheese. So just be sure to check the ingredients, not just the ingredient label. All right, for this next recipe, we're gonna add cottage cheese to a protein mix. So this is basically protein pancakes, but we don't even add any protein powder. So what I love about it is it's just a few simple ingredients that are just real food ingredients. Sometimes people aren't sure about protein powder, especially for kids. I do use it for our kids because we use a really clean protein powder, but if you're kind of leery about it, this is a perfect way to add protein without the protein powder. For this recipe, you'll need 4 eggs, 1½ cup of cottage cheese, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 3/4 cup of oat flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So go ahead and add the cottage cheese to the blender, and then we have 4 eggs here. We're gonna add those to the blender as well. And then we have oat flour, but because we're doing this in the blender, you could also just do old-fashioned oats.
This is my go-to when I don't know what to make for dinner.
Yes.
I always make breakfast for dinner, and my kids love it.
And also, this is kind of what we always know that everyone will like, and that's why we make them for Christmas morning. So for Christmas morning, well, it's changing every year now as far as what our traditions are, but for many, many years, when our kids were little, we would do protein pancakes at my mom and dad's house, and we would just all kind of chip in and help make the breakfast. And so this is something that you and I always did, is we always made the protein pancakes together. So.
And I think if you're gonna eat pancakes, whether it's breakfast or dinner, it's so nice to add protein to it because pancakes by itself are usually sugary. They're kind of more like a dessert.
Yes.
So it's good to add some protein.
Yes. Okay, so go ahead and blend that up.
And I don't think a lot of people know you can make your own pancake batter very easily. I think, prior to me making my own, I always get a box mix, right?
Yeah, true. So you can use a muffin scoop to put them on the griddle, or you can just pour them directly on straight from the blender. And what I love about pancakes is you can make them your own. So every time I make them with Maddie, she adds sprinkles and chocolate chips to them. And you can really just make them kind of fun. We also have done pancake bars for dinner. So we have tons of toppings just sitting around the table. And the kids, of course, love that because I have all kinds of fruit. We have berries. You could do nuts, whatever it is that your kids or your family likes, and then you can just set everything at the table. And as my kids are getting older, and well, Ollie's still 3, so he's still very little, but as they're getting able to feed themselves, let's say, I've been doing that a lot more, where I'll just put everything on the table, and then everyone kind of takes what they want and puts it on their own plate. That way, I'm not the one trying to make up all the plates in the kitchen, which is half the battle. It takes half the time.
Yeah.
Is trying to, as the mom, figure out like, okay, who needs what on their plate? So any kind of recipe or meal that I can kind of just throw it all on the table and let them make their own. It also, I feel like for kids, it gives them more independence
and choice.
Yes, and it kind of allows them to pick what they want and feel
some ownership.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like some sense of control. And little kids love that.
They do.
And it's good because you're the one that gets to pick the options. So you have healthy options on the table. And then they can just go ahead and pick it. And so then they're almost like, oh, I'll try that carrot, or I'll try that grape, or whatever.
When you make it think like it's their their choice.
Yes, rather than like you have to eat carrots.
Yeah.
So I have found that my kids, me doing that, I've seen them try a lot more things that they wouldn't normally try.
Agreed.
So that's been something that I've been learning as well. All right, so once, just like with any pancakes, once they start to have some bubbles on them, that's when you want to flip them.
They look good, they smell good.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, this is the best for dinner because you have all of these ingredients usually on hand.
Yes.
So I find like when it's a Friday night and I'm running out of groceries, this is a good option.
Same. Why is it that Friday night is always the night?
I know, and you just don't want to cook.
It's true.
That or Sunday.
Yes, that's why when we were growing up, our parents did pizza.
I know.
Because now I see, they just did pizza in a movie because they were sick of cooking.
They were tired. We thought it was the best thing ever.
Now we see.
Yeah.
But it really was. It was the most fun thing.
We should get a plate.
And our kids feel the same way. They're like, oh, pancakes for dinner? This is the best.
Yeah.
So really, we just don't want to make a full meal. Okay, so these will take just a few minutes on each side. And then we'll go ahead and continue to make the pancakes until all of the mix is used up. But this is a pretty hefty serving, so really this is meant to feed like a family of 4. You could always double them, and I do this kind of thing a lot whenever I am making muffins or snacks or anything like pancakes. I just double it and then I set it out on like a clean dish rag to really cool down. So you don't want any steam or any heat to be remaining. Let it fully cool, and then you can put them in a container and put them in the freezer. And that way you can pull out a few pancakes or whatever it is, muffins, out of the freezer and just microwave them whenever you want to reheat them. So it's nice to have some pancakes on hand for a busy morning or a busy evening. And protein pancakes are better than regular pancakes any day. All right, so we got about, I would say 16 pancakes out of this. So again, if you have a bigger family, you could always double the recipe. But these look really good. We can go ahead and finish these up, and we'll serve them with some fruit and, like I said, all the good toppings. And these add a good amount of protein. You'll never know that cottage cheese is in there. Coming up next, continuing with our protein hero ingredient, these gluten-free bagels combine cottage cheese for that extra boost to keep you fueled and satisfied all morning long. So oftentimes when we think about things like cottage cheese, we think of what's trending or what's in right now. And although it can be really tempting to just go along with whatever's trending in life, oftentimes I have to stop and remind myself, and I teach my kids, that it's not the best thing to always just go along with whatever everyone else is doing. So Romans 12:1-2 talks about submitting your body or surrendering yourself to God, and not to be conformed to the patterns of this world, to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And then you'll know God's good, acceptable, and perfect will for your life. And so oftentimes I have to just go back to that verse and remind myself, this is the roadmap that God gave us in order to find God's good, acceptable, and perfect will for our lives. It's not about being perfect, but it's about looking to the one who is, and ultimately surrendering and submitting to the things that He tells us to do or not to do. And so, you know, although we can learn and glean some wisdom from the world in some ways, right? Like we were talking about protein and fiber. These are all great things to remember and to think about. It's not that we're supposed to not think at all, but it's about ultimately following God's ways. And when we start to notice that the trends and the ways of this world is going against what God tells us in His Word, it's so important to remember to renew our minds with God's Word and remember what He tells us to do, because ultimately His way is the best way that will bring us to His good, pleasing, and perfect will for our lives. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like the best plan to me. Now we're adding cottage cheese to bagels. So these are protein-based bagels, and I have some everything but the bagel seasoning to put on top. So you could really make them any kind of bagel you like. So whatever toppings, if you like salt, if you like cheese, you can add anything to these bagels. Even cinnamon and sugar I've done, so they turn out really delicious. For this recipe, you'll need 1.5 cups of oat flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of cottage cheese, 1 egg, and 1 tablespoon of bagel seasoning. And I have some oat flour and simple ingredients, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg, and cottage cheese. So you can see, so simple. And I love to make these bagels, and my favorite time to make them is for traveling. So whenever I know that I will be anywhere for longer than a day or two, I like to bring my breakfast with me if I can. And these travel really well because essentially it's just like a baked good, just like if you were to pack up some regular bagels from the store. And these ones are much more nutritious because you could see the ingredients I added. Essentially, they're just like egg, oats, and cottage cheese, really, when you break it down. So really nutritious ingredients. And so this is what I do. I make these bagels ahead of time and then bring them with me. I do slice them in half so that I can kind of make them into whatever I want them to be. What I've learned to do is start my day off with a really healthy and nutritious breakfast. That way, I'm starting my day off really good, and it makes me feel good kind of the rest of the day. And I always find if I feel good, then I'm more apt to make better choices. So if I start my day and I'm just feeling sluggish and tired, then I really don't care what I end up eating. And you know, if you've ever had one of those days where you're just really tired and run down, that is very common, that you just kind of don't care, not just about what you're eating, but just in general. You're just like, I don't really feel like doing anything. I just don't care about all the things that really matter right now. And so I found that if I start my day and I make nutritious choices, if I move my body, then I'm like, okay, I really want to make better choices throughout the rest of my day. So when it comes to traveling, I just stick to the same type of basic principles that I do at home, and I try and make better choices, but I do allow myself more freedom as far as kind of relaxing more, of course, and enjoying foods that I wouldn't normally eat at home. But like I said, if I find that if I start my day with a more nutritious breakfast, I really do desire to eat healthier things and make better choices throughout the whole day. So I just divided the dough into 4 separate balls, and then I'm just kind of flattening them out into discs. Then I'm gonna kind of put my finger in there in the center, and that's what's gonna make the hole in the center of the bagel. Go ahead and stick your finger in there, kind of wiggle it around a little bit just to make a hole. And these are gonna puff up nicely. And like I said, you can even cut them in half. So you can toast them, you can make bagel sandwiches. Anywhere that you'd like to have a bagel, you can do just exactly the same with these. And you cannot taste the cottage cheese. I know you can see it just ever so slightly in the dough right now, but you won't even be able to see it once we bake them. And I promise you, you will not taste the cottage cheese at all. So we're just gonna top this with some bagel seasoning. And then you wanna just kind of form them a little bit more if you want to, just to make them look pretty. And we're gonna bake these 375 degrees for 20 to 22 minutes, just until they're lightly golden brown. Well, who would have guessed that all of these glorious looking recipes came from cottage cheese? Well, actually cottage cheese is in them in some way or form or fashion, but what I love about cottage cheese is it adds a rich source of protein and calcium, something that we didn't even talk about today, and it comes from just a natural source, which is milk. So it's a great nutrition booster and also something that we know that God made, so it's good for our bodies. So you can find all of these delicious recipes and more on dashingdish.com, where you'll find recipes and more to nourish your body and soul.